Gearbest.com told me that they were willing to send me anything from their website. And I saw one item that I thought would be really cool. A Super Famicom Classic. You know me, I love those classic systems, and I took a look at the Super NES Classic and I thought that was a fantastic thing. And I really wanted to see what the games are like on the Super Famicom Classic and just see if there was any really big differences. So they sent it, and then it came in. This looks like a Super Famicom Classic, don't it? But it's not. It's something else. Let's take a closer look.
The SNES Classic has quickly become an iconic video game system, and I know it's a bit too early for a lot of folks to really accept that, but it is done so well, so quickly, because it is a fantastic piece of tech. With its built-in list of games that attract a wide range of audiences, from hardcore gamers to even just passersby that loved Nintendo once upon a time, the Classic has proven itself to be one of the best systems you can get, especially if you're looking to play Super Nintendo games on your modern TV. But unfortunately, due to its success, it was only a matter of time for someone to come out and pirate the thing. And of course they did, and here's one of those systems. This is called the Super HDMI Mini Entertainment System, or the Super Mini SFC. It doesn't really matter, because what you're actually dealing with here is something I don't think anyone is ever gonna wanna buy. And if you did, you are in for a very bad surprise. To begin with, when you see the box that this thing comes in, it kind of looks like the Japanese Super Famicom Classic release that was so visually interesting because it was basically copying the same design they released for the original Super Famicom. Now, this is very iconic, you know, this is the way these things used to look, but what you're seeing on this box is an inverted color scheme. This is the best way to tell that you are looking at a fake system, but they did try pretty hard to make it look fairly close to the original. You'll also notice that there is no Nintendo logo, and to the top right, it says 621 8-bit games. No, not 16-bit, not 32-bit, 8-bit games. Because there is absolutely not one single Super Nintendo game on this system that's supposed to be a Super Nintendo. The only job you've got when pirating one of those SNES Classics or Super Famicom Classics is to basically steal the video game library from that console and put it on here. But you couldn't even do that because you didn't even copy the right system. What's actually inside of this thing isn't some Super Famicom whatever the heck. No, it's just a Coolbaby. You know, that system we already looked at in the past. In fact, it pretty much is the exact same game list, only we've just added a couple and shuffled around a few. So what you're looking at here is honestly just a Coolbaby with a different shell. Cool. Oh, and one more thing that just kinda got me. In the bottom left of this box, it said HDMI 1080p. Now that would have been a pretty amazing feat, considering that the official NES and SNES Classic only go to 720p. But this thing here... is promising a lot more, and it doesn't deliver. When I plugged it up and tested it, all I could get out of it was a 720p image, and unlike the NES and SNES Classic, which presents the proper aspect ratio for the games, this one just stretches out the games on your screen. I really don't want to play this console, but you know what? We're gonna do it, folks. You and me, we're gonna sit down and we're gonna beat this whole thing because we need to make sure that this never happens again. If in the future they ever make a Nintendo 64 Classic, there's no way that people will accept NES games being bundled into it. So this officially could mark the final time we ever see anything like this. Unless, of course, somebody decides to produce somebody tries N64 and Haku's another Coolbaby system into her names. All the NES ROMs N64 ROMs confusing the general public and possibly confusing younger consumers who wouldn't know the difference anyway. But that wouldn't happen, right? So as you might imagine, this console is very light and very hollow. I really don't know too much about what's inside here, and I'm not even gonna bother opening it up because I'm just quite certain it's very similar to what you would have found in a Coolbaby. The only difference with this one is, like I said, you've got HDMI out, and this one powers with a USB microcord. And just like the Coolbaby, the very front uses those same COM ports you'd find on a Sega Genesis or even something like an Atari. Now you want to know why that COM port is such a bad idea? Well, the controllers that are actually bundled with the system suck. And the biggest problem is if you actually own a real NES or a real Super Nintendo controller, you can't really plug them up to this thing because they're not compatible. I would have actually allowed this to just be a pass if the system had some kind of Bluetooth connectivity in it, but it doesn't have that either, so the whole thing just falls apart. Where do you even get COM ports anymore? I would have preferred 2 USB imports in the front so I could plug up generic gamepads into it. But no. We gotta use the controllers that are bundled with this thing. You know, the controllers with the terrible D-pads and more buttons than you need, because even though it's a Super Nintendo controller, these are still NES games. So you're only actually using 2 of the face buttons to the right, and you're never gonna touch the shoulder buttons, and there's a big reason why. The L and R buttons and the Y and X buttons are just turbo buttons for the B and A buttons on the face. You see, all that means is when you push those buttons down, they push the other buttons a lot, and that doesn't work with every single game, because for some games those buttons might be jump or whatever it may be, and although they're nice to have, the L and R buttons shouldn't have been turbo. They should have just been the regular ones. That way it would have just been so much easier to use them, but even if you could use them, they're super clicky and not in a good way. They almost feel like they're full-on function buttons that were created to turn on a TV and not to play video games. And to make things even worse, what they did was they actually used the E and A buttons on the SNES controller as the